Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hedin, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Mesa, Arizona. I have Dirk Sullivan with me today of Hawthorne Tile, and we're going to be talking about how creativity is not a commodity. And I don't know if installers, whether you're tile, carpet, hardwood, LVP, I don't care what kind of an installer you are. I don't care if you're a plumber. If you're in the trades, you're using creativity in some sense because you're at least having to come up with solutions to problems. And my experience from my reality television background has me realizing that people think creativity is a dime a dozen, and that is not the case. And I want you to value what you bring to the table. That's what this podcast is here for. Floor Academy wants to help you build an actual asset. If you own a job right now, we want to get you to owning a business. If you're owning a business, we want to get more systems and processes in place so that you can own an asset. And with that being said, I'm going to let Dirk introduce himself. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it?
Hey, Kyle. As you mentioned, I am Dirk Sullivan I own Hawthorne Tile in Portland, Oregon. It's my 23rd year of business. And I've been involved in tile for about, 34 years. So, in some capacity or another. I'm a musician as well, as a father, and that's really about it. You invited me here to talk about artisanship in our trade, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, don't sell yourself short. Dirk may not want to toot his own horn. He is the NTCA's 2022 Tile Person of the Year. So
okay,
he's kind of a big deal. All right. Dirk's a big deal over here. Don't let him sell you short.
Well, I will say this, the National Tile Contractors Association has been the greatest move I ever made as a business person. It really, especially not only joining the NTCA, but getting involved in the NTCA and getting to be involved in the betterment of our trade, whether it's the technical committee or training and education committees, which I've been on because I'm really involved in apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I wasn't going to be able to hire the people I needed, and because they didn't exist. I need people at a really high level. So I realized that what we needed to do is hire young people, maybe even green people, and that we thought were good candidates, and then get them trained as fast as possible in the best way possible. And it's an interesting thing about the tile trade. Trask Bergerson had a great point at one point in time, because he also owns a slab fabrication shop. And Trask told me, he said, in 1 year, I can train somebody to become a pretty damn good fabricator that I can count on. He said, with tile, it takes a minimum of 5 years. And I believe that's true, a minimum of 5 years. I've seen some people really launch in 3, but generally speaking, the confidence, getting enough tools together, getting your experience levels together where you can make good decisions, 5 at this to start. So it's a big investment, right? It's a big investment. So I invested a lot, and I invested a lot in the NTCA, and my company is better for it.
Mm-hmm. I love Trask. Trask participates in one of our mastermind groups, and he's brilliant. If you get the chance to talk with him, he's probably going to come up with something that'll give you a little insight. And
yeah, he has good thing. He's got the gift of gab too. He's a very creative man with the gift of gab. And so, and he's really, like you said, he's super intelligent
for sure.
And he cares. He loves his trade. He really, really, really loves it.
Yes. And I agree that it's going to take time to make somebody perfect. Right. And I personally, I would much rather start with somebody green and teach them
absolutely
no bad habits, and they only know my way because it's my company and I get that control.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's
exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing is that with anybody who's got employees and you're basically you're getting to the point where you can do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs at once, you really want to have the same quality on scale. right? You can't have an
Mm-hmm.
A team and a B team. That just doesn't work, man. You've got to have all A teams that are out there. And because you have to deliver the same quality of experience from the very beginning. And that's the piece of it, is that it's not just about the tile shower that we're building and the security of knowing that we've built that as good as it possibly can be built. It's about the entire experience. From the time we meet face to face, we work on the design, we work on everything, we pick up materials, we order materials, we complete the job. And then when the job's done, the back end with that, any kind of questions they may have about maintenance and upkeep and things of that nature, the service needs to be on scale the entire time, every time. And I think that is the beginning of how you break out of becoming a commodity. That you do something very, very, very different, and I think that sales model is really, you see it in the automotive industry a lot, which is, people, you want to have a great experience from the very beginning all the way through the process until you go to until you buy your next one or you have your next project. And I think that's one of the things that we tapped into that really helped us to be able to, okay, we're expensive.
Yeah,
we're expensive, and I get told we're expensive all the time, and I even get told we're double. God, I got 2 other bids. My God, you're double the other 2 bids. And I kind of explained to him, it's like, well, I do really hate that part of it. I wish that wasn't the case, but basically the continued salesmanship of how do you answer those questions? How do you get that? How do you still sell that job though you were double the cost of the other people they may have talked to? And especially what helps a lot for me is that every time they say, God, I really want to go with you. I mean, I liked you so much better than the other guys. I felt that you understood the project. I felt all these things. And so you build trust right up front.
Yes.
And depending on where the referral came from originally too, the referral could have came from somebody else that they cared about, that trusted us to do the work. And I just think it takes a number of years to get that and be confident in your price. And the more confident you are in your price has to do with, and Kyle, I know you're the master at this, is understanding what your price has to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because because you get 2 different prices from 2 different people before us doesn't mean that my price needs to reflect their price. I guarantee those 2 other companies don't have any idea what their overhead is.
Correct.
They just don't know. And they don't understand that. And we invest a lot in our staff, and apprenticeship is certainly not inexpensive. And then you're when you want to retain really, really good top people, you're paying them at the top, and as well you're also providing them with other benefits, lots of vacation time, lots of paid holidays, health benefits for them, and sometimes for their spouses and families. You're doing everything you can to make sure you're building a very safe community within your company. I mean, that's what we've done. It's really, really helped us a lot.
Well, you're investing in people.
Well, though this may be a tile business and we may be flooring installers, and it's a people business.
Yes,
it's what it is. First and foremost, it's people. And the number one thing is your employees. Number 2 is your customers. Number 3 is the product itself. And both of them have to be within inches of each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to develop. Just the service has to be very, very high.
Yes. Well, if you take care of your people properly, they'll take care of your clients properly. They'll have no reason not to. So right. I want to roll it back a little bit, because you were like, look, I was able to build something by investing in people and knowing that, this isn't a commodity-based business, and I'm sometimes double my price and things like that. So let's roll this back to music. I was reading your old contractor spotlight, and essentially out of school right away, you said, I want to go make music, right? You went to school, you studied music, and you wanted to have a band. So let's start there. What did that look like? Because you were touring, and I believe released an album or 2 at a minimum, right?
Yeah. So, I didn't, I always I knew I was going to do something in the art field. I drew, I drew and painted my whole life. Mm-hmm. Always kind of figured I'd be doing something creative. I knew I would be doing something creative. I didn't know whether it would be graphic art, whatever it would be. There was a point in time where I wanted to be a cartoonist. I was drawing cartoons and I had a strip and I was like doing all those things. I really enjoyed that. And I've always loved music. My earliest memories were music. Earliest memories, like just hearing, I think the Beatles were always playing around the house, and AM radio couldn't have been freaking better in your car when you were between 67 and 1978. I mean, radio was what we listened to, and you get on a good rock station and there's freaking incredible stuff, and it was awesome, and I loved it all. And I loved hard rock, and I knew I wanted to do something with music, and I always loved it. So I didn't really start playing guitar until I was about 17, which was when I was a junior in high school, and that changed everything for me. I just decided right away. I think everybody must have thought I was crazy because meaning the mom and dad there, because it's like his kid's never played guitar before. Now he's starting to play guitar. He's all of a sudden, getting together with friends, jamming, just figuring it out. And then by the time I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to study music. I wanted to understand it.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily think I wanted to go get a music degree to some extent. I didn't really have that, but I knew I wanted to further understand music. And so I went and studied music for 2 years, and studied music theory and got the basics of music theory, and being able to read, being able to sight read with be able to sing what you're seeing on the page, tuning up my ears to understanding what's on the page, what's happening musically, and during that time, my second year of school, I ended up meeting three other dudes actually, that ended up becoming the band that we formed, and ended up ultimately recording a demo and then getting signed to Interscope Records, and getting to make record and do thing of that. That was how that worked out.
Well, so how did that process go? Right. Because that's something that then you had to be signed, right? If we look at the music industry today, I have my laptop in front of me. I have my, well, it used to be an M-Box. It's not an M-Box brand, but I can't even think of what it's called. It's not a mixer. It's a whatever it is. I can't think of it, but it allows you to input the stuff and actually have control per like channel and all that fun stuff, right? I can hook up a mic. I can hook up a guitar. I can hook up a keyboard. I can hook all these things in. I fiddle around. I can produce it right here in my laptop, and I can go to a website like SoundCloud, upload it, and I can make my TikToks and my Instagram videos about it, and I can become the next big thing. There is that possibility.
It's really, in a lot of ways, it's really not any different than it used to be, where you had to go out and play clubs. You'd record a demo of some kind. You'd go out and play clubs. You build a big following. It wasn't a digital following; it was a local following. And then you would take it to the next stage. And then you'd have to hit the road and you'd tour, and you'd hit multiple markets multiple times. And every time you hit that next market, and again, you'd have more people at your shows and more people at your shows, and you build it organically like that. And what people are doing with how they're using the social platforms, it's very similar. It's a little quicker, and the cream still rises to the top to some degree, the way it would in the olden days of getting out in the van and hitting every city and sleeping in the van and getting a Motel 6 and piling everybody into it in the early days of touring, right? So, and music's changed in a lot of ways too. The traditional rock band really isn't a thing. I mean, there's still tons of them doing great stuff, but what kids are listening to, I wouldn't even say buying, because nobody's buying shit. That's the problem too. That's why most people are starting to make vinyl only, because vinyl is the only thing that sells, period. People don't buy, they very rarely download music. Some real fans do. They'll download the music, they'll download it properly. They'll own the music the way you should own the music, rather than downloading it to a playlist from Spotify. And then I've got 10,000 songs that you ripped off, by the way. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And the musicians themselves only get like fractions of a penny every time somebody listens to it. So it's like every single musician out there that's doing business like that, they have to have a side hustle. They've got to have something else. That just doing music is not going to pay your bills.
Yeah. Well, what was the I mean, you're being a musician, you're being an artist, you're drawing and stuff. So what was the level to promote yourself? Were you the one like making up flyers and
Oh
trying to
yeah,
help self promote yourself? Like,
yeah.
how did
In those
your
days,
creativity
yeah.
play into all of it?
Yeah, in those days, the beginning, early days of that, we were making our own posters, creating our own logos, doing all that stuff, creating our own T-shirt designs, and that was a big part of it. And then when we get to the next level, you've got we start hiring out people who can do it even better. They
Mm-hmm.
have better equipment. That's what they do, right? They have graphics departments and things of that nature. So, but
What's that transition like from going from doing it yourself to hiring somebody? Because once again, right, like creativity is often frowned upon, and so when you first started having to pay someone to do it, but you were doing it yourself, were you kind of like, oh, that's more than I want to spend, or did it make sense
no,
to you that you had to pay that amount, or was it kind
there
of a
was
fight because you're
value.
like, I can do it myself?
Yeah, no, there's value in it. There was value in it because what ended up happening. Let me preface this. Go back a step. For every show we did, we as a band went out and hung posters. We
Mm-hmm.
would divide and conquer around the city. Everybody has a hammer tacker and a big bag of posters, and we'd go out and be hanging posters. And we would do it like for 3 nights in a row, and because then you want to go out and make sure nobody's covering your posters and making sure you're not covering another band's posters that are playing the next night. You want to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
it's going. That's just the way it was. It was real grassroots. Hiring out professional graphics for your posters and for your branding was taking it to the next level. All of a sudden, you've got it. The colors pop more. The graphics are better. You look more professional. You get a poster that people are going to see. Go, oh, wonder who the hell these guys are. They look like a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing. You always want to look bigger than you really are, and because you're creating this you're creating an illusion. You really are. You're creating an illusion of that we've made it, we're making it, we are making it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the music proves itself after that. And then the vibe of what's happening in the shows. And that was pretty much it. And I think this is very similar to move forward to where we are now as a company and our branding. I actually hired the guy who did our latest logo, which has been about 8 years ago. We hired Mike. He got his start. He did Motley Crue posters, Motley Crue T-shirts. He's the guy who did, all Tony Hawk skateboard artwork. He did all Mattel Hot Wheels. He did the Ramones album covers. I mean, he goes on and on and on and on. I mean, if you look him up, he's insane. And I was like, that's the guy, because he understands the branding. And I wanted to have something that wasn't just, I didn't want it to be rock and roll. Don't get me wrong. But what I wanted it to be, something that was, if you have a logo that is so cool, somebody's going to want to wear it, even if they don't even know what tile is. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. We had our first batch of T-shirts made and sweatshirts made. My kids were wearing their sweatshirts to school, and every one of their friends wanted one. Every one of them. Well, and so we
go ahead.
And I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, mission accomplished. We may not be attracting our customers, but we're attracting something. There's something going on with the imagery that is attracting somebody. So,
well, you used an interesting word, right? So people talk about advertising, they talk about marketing, and they talk about branding. Those are not the same three things. No. At all. And you need to understand that. So can you tell me, like, what is your definition of branding?
Branding is the image that you use. I mean, we definitely have a brand, right? We do things. We have a way we do things. There is something the way our brand operates, mm-hmm. right? Our brand has also a look to it, right? So we have the image, we have the Hawthorne Tile logo, we have the hand with the trowel, and all those things operate independently of each other or together. But that really helps create the image that we can market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you may have a more educated definition of that, but for me, that here's a good point. We were having a bunch of new T-shirts made, and one of them that a lot of the people here we were going over it with our management team, and somebody go, oh, I really like this yellow color. Well, I saw the image, the rendering of it on yellow, and I was like, it's not strong enough for our branding. It's not, because we'd have to go to a whole nother colorway with the logo to have it pop off the shirt and
Okay.
speak Hawthorne tile. And so the branding is anything that your company's image is on.
Okay. No, I like it, right? It's, for me, like the branding is, you know that company when you hear the name, right? Like, you know what's going to
Okay.
get delivered, right? Like, so you're branded really well, because I can tell you Nike, and what can you tell me about Nike, right? You're going to tell me just do it. You're going to
Swoosh.
tell me Michael Jordan, there's the swoosh,
Yeah.
like all these things come to mind, right? It's built in, it's ingrained. Or you can take Coca-Cola, right? How much of the country says I want a Coke? No one says I want a Pepsi when I go to a restaurant,
Right.
right? It's like, if you're asked what soft drink do you want, it's I want a Coke. It's that the brand is so ingrained into something, and
Right.
that's where I think that didn't happen on accident. That's people using their creativity and their genius to make this happen. And so when you told me, hey, we made our first sweatshirts, my kids wore to school, and everyone was like, I need that. Dude, those kids don't even care that it's a shirt or sweatshirt for a tile company. They were just
They
like,
don't.
that's cool. I need to wear that, because whatever that is, there's something with that screams, this is a brand I want to represent.
Dude, it had mojo. And that's the best way I can put it. It's like it had mojo, and that was like when my kids started coming home saying, "Oh, Ethan wants a sweatshirt," or "So and so wants a sweatshirt." I'm like, and then parents are coming to me, "Hey, both Alex and Trina want a sweatshirt. Can we I want to get those for them for Christmas." It's like that. I mean, it's not even selling tile.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't, and that's an interesting point, but it was very important to me to have that be what happened, and it wasn't necessarily what I expected to happen, but it's cool, right? There's a cool factor to it.
Well, does that go back to your music days? In once you're signed, like, traditionally labels put so much money out, right? You get an advance, then you got to you work it off. And so really
Right.
the way bands make money very early on, before they can afford to pay for their own tours, is merch. So you better
Yep.
have merch that's attractive and that sells. So
Yep.
is that something that you developed through that portion of your career?
Absolutely. When it came time for the imagery for our record and for the things that we're going to translate to a T-shirt and to the logo and all these things, we interviewed a lot of artists, and ended up settling with there's an artist, an LA artist named Bad Otis Link, and he's an interesting dude. An incredible artist, and he whipped something up, an idea up right away that kind of like clicked, that created a great image, a great thing, something that looked good on T-shirts, and something that somebody would probably want to wear even if they didn't know the band.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it is. It's like, I see a lot of construction companies. I'll go back to that say, "Oh, here's a T-shirt," and I'm not just saying tile companies, because I know we trade T-shirts with a lot of our friends in the industry and stuff, and but there's something about it, and you get one that's just like, it's kind of like lazy. It's like I look at the shirt and I go, I'm probably not going to wear this. It doesn't look. I've got a lot of options of things I want to put on my body. That's I remember when Rod Catwick gave me the first Rod Cat shirt. I wore that shirt every fucking time I had the opportunity to, and just because the image was cool,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a lot of it had to do with the image was really cool. It was understated, and Rod's awesome, and so but I love the shirt, and so I wear it. I wear it all the time.
Well, I think that one thing you said was we interviewed a bunch of artists. How many of these guys, when they're going out, they're doing their company, they'll go on a website like Fiverr these days, and they'll just find whoever they want to like create a logo, or they'll ask for recommendations of a graphic designer in an online Facebook group and go with that person. I don't think you can do that. And I'm guilty of it too, right? Like, you hire a website guy, and I have an in-house designer, like, okay, I'll just use them. Like, give me the 5 designs that you come up with based on this, and we'll tweak it from there. What if I were to go and hire somebody that specialized in this? And I interviewed multiple companies that specialized in branding, because I want to be able to build out my logo with my marketing and my ideas. And there's companies that specialize in putting all this stuff together for you. And I think that's where we lack in this business as individuals a lot of times, is we're not looking at the long-term goal of what message we're putting out there.
Right, exactly. There's another piece of this, and this might be interesting to some folks, but when we were having our logo designed by Mike, um, we're Hawthorne Tile. Hawthorne is a street in Portland, in Southeast Portland. It's a kind of a cool district, a lot of shops, a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For 25 years I lived right off Hawthorne. I always thought that I'd have an office around there someday. That didn't pan out, but we're a mile and a half away. But Hawthorne also is on there's a bridge called the Hawthorne Bridge, and one of the things that, and also I did not want a font based logo. I didn't want or I did not want it to be font based, right? Okay. So something's like, oh, you've picked through you're on the computer, you pick through, it's like, any number of the hundreds of fonts that are there, and you would use one. And what he did is he took the architecture of the Hawthorne Bridge, which has all these angles in it, and used those contours to create the letters in the name. And that's a subliminal thing. Nobody would ever pick that up. I mean, we're not a national company, we're a local company. We can only do work within probably a 10-mile radius of where our office is. Mm-hmm. And so the Hawthorne name has to mean something. And so we took he took that a step farther. And when I saw that he had done that, he sort of explained to me, I was like, bravo, man, way to tap in. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Well, that's it, right? You want somebody that identifies with your message. And I don't know that a lot of times we know how to articulate what we want, right? We sit there and we describe, here's kind of what I'm thinking, and here's some colors I kind of like, and they throw something together and you're like, yeah, that looks good, because that's not necessarily our specialty. So you end up, I think, settling for something that isn't really there. Whereas there was a podcast I was listening to, and the guy was like, he was talking about how to communicate with a designer, and it was, write down really what you want, know the vision for your company, your mission statement, your core values, kind of get all that stuff in place, and then start pulling, like, from magazines, like flip through magazines or the internet or whatever, right? And start storing images of things that really speak to you, and get them down on a sheet of paper and put like a collage together, and be able to hand that off to the designer and be like, this is stuff in the vein of what I'm looking for. And then they're not going to come up with 5 random ideas. They'll come up with 5 ideas that are more in line with what you're looking for. But you have to be able to communicate in a language that artists understand. And oftentimes that creativity puts them on it's a different plane, I think. Like, people that are highly, highly creative, they don't generally function on the like rationale level. And you have to find a different way to get the message across to them. And so use their mediums to get that information to them, I think.
Sure.
So how did being involved in music help you build a tile company, if it did?
Well, here's the cool thing about that, and here's where I really think what it really built for me. And I think, a lot of people who played team sports understand this as well too, is that when you're in a band and you're in a collaborative, especially a band that writes music together and is collaborative, you learn how to work with people. You really do. You learn how to work with people, and you learn how to compromise, and then you also learn how to put your foot down when you feel like what you have to offer is worthy of a second idea, a second listen. So I was good at working with people, and I think that really helped me when it came to having employees, and when it came to working with customers. And because when you're I'll put a customer in I'll put a scenario with a customer in, because you're the customer, potential customer, they may or may not know what they want, but you start bouncing ideas off each other, and you collaborate, and then finally you throw something out and they throw something out, and together you're making something that's better than the sum of its parts in theory. And then you get a chance to go and take your team in and make it better than everybody expected. And I learned early on that you can't exceed anybody's expectations unless you fully understand them. So it means you have to listen. You do a lot of listening. And as a musician, that's what you have to do. You have to listen. When you're playing in a group of people, you're not just listening to what you're playing. You're not just talking. You're listening. It's organic. We're all creating this thing together. And I think that's the first step in building that confidence with that customer, because you're asking more questions than you are talking. And then once you understand what they want and they're saying a couple things, you're bouncing things off each other. And then pretty soon you come to an agreement on what the job's going to be. You price it. It may be more, it will be more than they wanted it to be, but they'll feel good about spending that money because they know you fully get it.
I'm going to pause this right there. We'll come back. I want to talk about how it's going to be more, right? But that was probably a learned lesson over time of selling this creativity, this vision to them. And I think that's a struggle a lot of people have.
Absolutely.
Hey, listeners, whether you're an installer, retailer, distributor, or serve in another capacity within our industry, attending trade shows is a solid resource to expand your knowledge and networking base. You can also learn about the newest and industry-leading products coming to market. The International Surface Event is returning to Las Vegas January 31st through February 2nd, so mark your calendars now. Floor Academy podcast listeners will have exclusive registration offers coming soon. Stay up to date with the International Surfaces event page on Facebook. Johns Manville manufactures a range of innovative building materials, including products for the flooring industry. From GoBoard to Evolith, Johns Manville products are not often visible, but they provide technical, environmental, and economic advantages to the essential items you are installing every day. GoBoard is an ultra-lightweight and waterproof tile backer board, while Evolith products are fiberglass or polyester non-woven components used in making carpet tiles, LVT, and resilient floors. So, Dirk, how did this go for you, right? You just talked about selling this creativity and working with the client and really listening, which I think is a huge learned skill that many more people need to learn, right? Don't go in a house and talk about how you're the best. Don't talk about how you're going to necessarily get the project done. That's important. But after you understand what they want and you're talking on the same page. So how do you sell this creative vision, and how did you learn to sell it at a profit?
It took a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this in work. I mean, it was hard. Here's the thing that's tough for young business people, especially if you don't have any business background. Even if you know how much something should cost, you look at a number and go, Jesus, that's a big number. That's a big number. I'm uncomfortable with that number. Yeah. And then you'll go, I think I could probably get it done faster. And you'll work it down. And then if you're good at what you do, or you're paying attention, you'll realize that time out you didn't make any money. It's like, okay, I didn't make any money. So if you learn how to reconcile your jobs early on, you learn how to figure it out. You learn how to figure out what is your overhead, what is your minimum that you can be profiting on every job. Then you figure out you have to take a few lumps, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a few wins, a few losses. And unfortunately, I didn't have a great coach at the time. When I started my business, I did have a really great accountant and who was able to set my company up properly as an S corp. And I had a good attorney. We figured all those things out early, and that was a blessing. But as far as how to price the work, it took a minute because in the community, just like most folks are probably watching this, people get wrapped up in square footage prices. Yes. And back in early 2000, in 1999, 2000, people were saying, oh yeah, $10 a square foot for everything. I'm like, and I remember going, how does that even work? And I know that people still today are working for $4 a square foot in some markets. And so, yes. But back then, 23 years ago, I knew it didn't work. I knew that you could probably be profitable on floors as long as you had big open areas that were flat and you were just dropping squares, not rectified tile, pillared edge, tile that you could set with an 1/8 inch grout joint, and you just basically comb out your thin set and you're putting them down. You're making money hand over fist at that point.
Yes.
But you start getting rectified tiles, crisp square edges that need to be set, and even marble, and need to be set with a 32nd inch grout joint or 16th inch grout joint with no lippage at all. Then that price isn't really working because it requires a lot more effort. Walls, shower walls, bathroom walls, backsplashes. That $10 a square foot, it's like, well, that's a 30 square foot backsplash, and all I can charge is $300 for it. And I remember thinking, this is just baloney. This is baloney. And so I started figuring out, well, how long is this job going to take? How long is this job going to take? These pieces of this job, how long are they going to take? And pricing everything based on time, and coming up with a day rate. What's my day rate, or what's even your hourly rate, and what's your minimum?
Yes.
And then and that really started to change everything. Yeah. And as my crew got bigger, it became more important to understand how long something took. And and just because I was installing too, I got caught up in, I could do that. I could do that tub run a day, in and out. And so but as it turned out, as our methods improved and our systems improved and the way we're putting assemblies together improved based on our knowledge of TCA, you probably can do a tub surround in a day. You probably can, but nobody's going to. 90% of people aren't. Usually it's 2 days total. Or if it's more ornate, then you add a niche. How much does that niche cost? How long did the niche take? What's happening with the niche? How much time did it take to seal it? You had to come back. Now you have to come back the day after you grout. You got to seal the grout, and then you have to do all your siliconing. Especially when we switched over to silicone about 10 years ago, it takes more time, a little bit more time, more finesse. Yes. So you're breaking it down into installation of the shower. From rough in. If is there any additional prep? Do you have to since we're not going to probably mud the walls, do you have to fur the wall out? Do you have to do any shimming? How long is that going to take? How long is it going to take to rough it in? How long is it going to take to install the tile? How long is that niche going to take? Oh, there's 2 niches. Okay. And then we got, and then the finishing of it. And then how much were the materials plus my markup? And by the way, what's my markup? What is markup? And what's the difference between markup and margin?
Yeah.
And
now you're talking.
You mean, and I remember having all those things start to click. Excuse me. And then, but understanding how to, markup is this way, margin's this, and then figuring out based around my overhead, how much should my markup be? And then tile, that was the other thing too. It's like, okay, now we're selling tile to customers. How do we get the best price on the tile? I mean, I don't want to go down but I want to make sure we're getting the best price on tile as a contractor so we can mark it up the most we possibly can. Yes. In a lot of cases, I would like to keystone the tile because, especially when you're talking about tile that's less expensive stuff like a dowel that you can get for $3 a square foot, you better be selling it for $6. It's just good because it's only $3 a square foot that you're making a profit on. So there's really not a ton of money in it, but there's enough money in there that you need to be making it because you're going down and picking it up. And then if there's a lot of deliveries, adding deliveries, any logistics we need to know about, and having all those things go into your proposal. And I did something that most people kind of frown on. I do a very, very, very detailed, broken out bid that has a dollar amount for every single thing we're doing.
Yeah.
That way, if somebody removes the niches, they go, we're going to take out the niche. Great, no problem. It's just 2 line items, or no, we're not going to do floor heat. Great, I'll just remove those line items.
Yep.
I know a lot of people believe you really shouldn't break those numbers out. You really want to have one price at the very end of the bid, and that's it. You don't want to expose too much. But I felt like I want to expose it all because I'm not going to tell them how much a square foot they're for the tile, and I'm not going to tell them how many square feet they're buying. I'm just going to say, Dow 3x6, Arctic White 190, and then the column that they can't see is 100 feet times 6, $600 for the tile.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And whatever the bullnose and trim are, they don't see any of that, but they see the numbers, how much it costs for each line item, and they realize when they see a bid that broken down, it's like, oh god, yeah, they're telling me, they're showing me all that goes into this. Now I better understand that big number at the end.
I'm with you. That's how I do my bids. And I like it because when somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, you're really expensive, it's a lot easier for me to present, okay, how do you want to change the scope of project to better fit your your budget. And like you said, right? Well, okay, we can take off the in-floor heat. We can take off the niches. I'll do my own demo. Okay, well, now let me change what constitutes you doing the demo. It'd better look like this when I walk in. Otherwise, I'm charging you that amount of money, even if the carpet is all gone. If you leave the tack strips and the nails in there, I'm charging you for all of it regardless. So you better get it right.
Exactly.
Like
one other thing I stopped doing is I don't round up or down. I don't do that. I don't leave numbers with, I don't like really super even numbers, like $250 for this, $2,500 for the labor, $300 for this, because that's not really how much it costs. If you know your labor rate, if you're billing a labor rate for a setter and a helper, let's just say at $119 an hour, by the time you're putting that in, that is never an even number. And I don't round it up or down. I like those in there. I might get rid of pennies, but I won't get rid of odd numbers. I had the biggest bid I ever turned in my life, and I was really nervous about it because it was really a huge job, but it was $302,000 and some other numbers. Let's say it was 32988, and the project manager for the builder called me back. He was cracking me up. He goes, dude, I love it. You didn't round down, and I was like, no, because that's how much it costs. That's exactly how much it costs.
Yeah.
Why would I round it up or down?
Well, it grabs attention too. It stands out from everybody else because everyone else was 305, 300, 270, like whatever the numbers were, right?
299,599. We're not buying cars here.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I think that I don't know the psychology behind that, if there's anything there, but I also want people to know that the bid that I'm turning in is exactly what it costs to do the job. Mm-hmm. We didn't overlook a dang thing, and there probably aren't any deals to be made. Right? This is what we said. This is what we're going to do. Exactly. It's all there. Let's do it.
What about through the design process? Because you are offering custom stuff, so there is a design process, and so you get to look at it and do it. And I think oftentimes people start out and they're hungry to maybe get that one-off project so they can show off their skills and really do it. But they're going to go home and they're going to spend 3 hours drawing up these mock-ups and then submit them. And somebody's going to say, well, you're too expensive. I'm going to go with Billy Bob over here. But they've already got your designs and you didn't even get paid for them. Is that a lesson you learned the hard way? Or were you always by chance charging?
It's happened. It's happened before. I typically don't design with somebody until we have a signed contract based on a preliminary budget. Mm-hmm. It's no problem to give away a few ideas and say, oh gosh, it'd be really cool to do this and really cool to do that. But most of the time, when we have somebody coming into our showroom to work with them, and Travis, my project manager, does it way more than I do. I typically end up working more anymore with our well-established builders and designers and stuff like that. And then I'll input from there. But Travis, about 75% of what he does is work with people in the showroom and design. Mm-hmm. And because of that, we pretty much already have a signed contract before we're doing anything. And so, and then those 3-4 hours you spend designing something for somebody, it's no big deal, because then now we're getting real numbers for the job. We already have a preliminary. Now we're getting real numbers. So you can factor some of that in back into the job. And then if somebody really needs a lot of hand holding and it's going to take a while, you basically come to them and say, okay, here's what's going to take to complete your job. You are probably going to require another 10 hours of design. We'll do it at this. We'll do it at this price, or we'll do this price not to exceed 12 hours, or something along those lines. And people are usually pretty good about that. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I find that most people don't require much more than 4 hours. At least for the jobs for the smaller jobs, because I'm really, all we are is we're designing. We're not designing the whole bathroom. We're not going and picking the wallpaper and picking the paint colors and picking the cabinet faces. They're usually coming to us with those decisions already made. I think this is my paint color, but we could change this. But here's my cabinet faces. Here's my quartz I want to use for the countertops, and then we basically pull together the design from there.
Well, and don't short yourselves, people. Like, listeners, know what you're bringing to the table. Okay, if they knew what they wanted, They would have drawn it up. They would have come to you and said, this is what I want, and here's the finishes I want, here's the colors I want, right? They'd walk into your showroom if you have one, and they would start showing you everything they needed. So don't take what you offer and what you're bringing to the table for granted. If they could do it, they already would have done it. And I think that's the message here that Dirk is telling is you can charge for the design, whether even if you just draw it up because you want to sell a really cool shower with some niches and you want to do some cool stuff with like hexagon tiles and 12 by 24s and mix them together and do some scribing or something like that. Someone has to envision this, and then you have to translate that vision to paper. That's not a skill that they had. Otherwise, they already would have had this cool idea and brought it to you. So you can charge for that, and you can charge handsomely for it. If you're going to go and make, the way I look at it is if I can be on the floor and I have to make at least $125 an hour, then I'm going to get paid $125 an hour to put pen to paper.
Yep.
Because it does. I could have been on the floor somewhere. So I might as well make the same amount, unless I can find a way to justify a higher cost because the equipment costs more to be able to do this, which it doesn't. It's a pen and a piece of paper. I'm doing pretty good there, making $125 an hour. And you can sell. All you have to do is tell your clients that this requires me to be able to come up with the vision that you want, put it on paper. It's going to take me time to draw it up, and they'll buy it. If it's part of the process, they're going to want to approve what you're going to put up before you put it in. Most likely, they're not going to want. It's very rare that you can get free creative control from a client. It happens, but it's rare.
Let's go back to the other point: is you can't exceed your customer's expectation unless you fully understand it. Mm-hmm. So, creative, full creative is dangerous because you really want to get checked off on everything along the way, and you want to get signatures on design and things like that. Otherwise, you're gonna have the customer that comes back and says, "Oh, no, that's not what I wanted," or "That's not what we talked about."
Yeah.
No, that's not what we talked about. And you're going, "Oh my God, we totally talked about that." And they're going to say, "No, you said this and you said this," and you're going, "Oh my gosh, how did this get so back-asswards?" And that's happened, by the way. And so just getting signatures on pieces of paper, taking great notes, having an email thread that has everything in it that from the very beginning of your correspondence till the very end, it stays on one thread, including anybody you need to be copying on that thread, whether you're working with a general contractor, whether you're working with other subs, anybody needs to be on that thread. And they can be in and out of the thread, right? But you need to have that. And if it's in one place with one subject line, you can search it super easily anytime you need to get back to it.
Totally agree. Look, you got to cover your butt, right? And documentation is the only way you're going to do that. And so stick to one method. Don't go from text to voice, like text to email to written confirmation. If you started with email, but then something happens in text message, you better be screenshotting and then writing up an email, inserting those images, updating it, saying, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure this was all in one place." Cover your butts. How does the creativity factor into it for you? Like, when did you realize that even though you were setting tile, you were selling creativity?
Right away. Right away. I think the one thing that I realized immediately about tile and in comparison to music is it was really rhythmic. A great layout is rhythmic. It tells a story, right? It's complete. It's got a start and a finish. It's a silly way to put it, but I think that I knew immediately it was way before I even started my own company, when I was working with the other 3 companies I worked for before I started my own, that I enjoyed interfacing with the customer. I was good at it instantly. I knew I was. I was confident about my ideas, and I was also confident about telling somebody if something was like, "Oh gosh, that's actually a pretty good idea, but what if we did this? And what if we did this?" And that's kind of, I took that that little piece of it into when I started my own company. And what I offer my employees is that communication factor, and never miss an opportunity to do something awesome. If you see something that could be better, let's all know about it as quickly as possible. If there's part of the design that we didn't pick up, and now you have we're going from drawings to a real space, and you see an opportunity, what is it? Let's talk about it real quick. Let's present it and do it, because we never want to miss an opportunity to do something great or make something better than it could have been.
No, I
And
think
so
that's
every
great.
one of my installers knows that. And I, most of the time, things go as planned. Occasionally somebody will say, "Hey, listen, I want to do this to the niche." I can't come up with a scenario right now, but you had a recess niche, how it's playing out with the grout joints. We had one just recently where Vladdy, one of my lead installers, he had a condition where he had a back wall that had a niche on the left and right side, except for the niche went all the way to the back wall. So the back wall comes down, but where the niche is, it travels in 4 inches and then back down. And he had a herringbone pattern. And so how do you take that herringbone pattern and connect it so it connects back into the niches and wraps, which is impossible to do the way this was laid out. And he came up with a way to do it, and I gave him full license to do it. And I was there this morning and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, that's genius. Bravo. It's just like, it's so good. Such a great idea. So outside the box that you can't believe how cool it is. And that only happened because he was willing. He knew he wasn't under the gun for time. He knew something great had to happen, and he worked it out enough that it didn't waste any time. It just basically, he probably spent another couple hours coming up with it, mocking it up and realizing it's going to work. And he went ahead and did it. And it's like unreal. And so it's stuff like that, it's like that, we don't do the type of work like our friends Lee and Jane do at Dragonfly or Joshua Nordstrom, where they're doing extraordinary work, just unbelievable works of functional art.
Yeah.
But to some degree, we have the same heart in what we're doing. And I don't ever want to miss sight of that, because that's what Hawthorne Tile is all about. That's what I'm all about. That's what's made it fun for me for all these years. I mean, I love that creative aspect of it. I love those little triumphs. I love the synergy where everything comes together, and it's like, it's killer. It feels great.
No, I totally agree. I think what's often overlooked is we get into a mindset where I'm just an installer. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm sure Dirk will tell you, you're not just an installer. And I don't care if you are doing apartment carpet. I don't care if you're slapping in plastic floating floors like myself in another living room that's just a rectangle. If you're doing, another rectangular room of hardwood and it's just a straight lay, you are more than just an installer. You have to bring so much to the table to even make it happen. Your comprehension of the prep work, your comprehension of how these products interact with each other as the temperatures and moisture changes within a house. Knowing how to do proper layouts so that it's balanced on both sides of the room. Knowing how to make sure that your end joints don't end up 2 inches, as a 2-inch piece when it should be at least an 8-inch piece. All of these little factors, and you being able to plan ahead to overcome them, makes you more than an installer. It makes you a professional. It makes you a creative, because you're having to be able to look at it from a different way, other than like these pieces only, because you're finding a way to put the pieces together so they actually fit together the way you want them to, not the one way they're intended, which is start with a full piece and go until you hit the wall and bring the last piece back. Like, you're manipulating it to play the game that you want it to play. And I guess, that's one way to look at it, right? It's kind of like Tetris, and Tetris is a abstract game of using creativity to put these pieces together. And that's what you're out there doing every day. Don't shortchange yourself and go out on bids and say, nah, I'm just an installer. I don't care what level of work you're doing right now, you're not just an installer. And when you get over that head trash, you will be able to move your business forward to levels you never thought possible. So how does that play into this, Dirk? Were you in that phase kind of early on, do you think, where you were like, I just kind of show up and I slap some stuff together? Or did always being a creative, and once again, like, I think the world doesn't value creativity. They look at it as a commodity, and we have to change that opinion. So was that a struggle for you through all of this?
No, I don't think so. I think that that's just I've always had the confidence that and I've always worked in an environment with people who appreciated creative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The first guy I worked with is this guy Bruce Madison, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was just starting out. I was really just more of a helper. I was mixing mud. Mixing thin set, cleaning up. But watching Bruce work, he was a massive creative. He was creative to a fault, and I think at the end of the day, Bruce probably was bidding a job really low just to get it, and then doing all the creative stuff and probably not making as much as he should have. But that's a whole nother story. But watching him work, that he was always looking for, if he saw something really awesome, he was going to make it even better, always. And and I loved that about it, working for him. It was really great. We had the projects were always fun. It was always enjoyable. And then the next folks I worked for, as I started getting a little bit better, I had more opportunities. But I always loved the creative end of it, and I always had confidence that I could be creative. And then being in an environment where creativity is not frowned upon, and I was just lucky. And by the time I was able to start my company, I knew I wanted to do something different, and I knew there was things I didn't want to do, and I knew who I didn't want to be. Mm-hmm. And I even had a couple builders that at the time were coming to me from this other contractor I was working for, and I didn't really want to do their work because they weren't the types of jobs that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be associated or called on or indebted to that type of work. I really do. I wanted to get to the point where we were doing more high-end, fun projects with a lot more creative opportunities. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it worked.
Well, I think having that vision of knowing where you want your company to go really helps. And it's one thing to know that maybe early on you have to take some of those jobs, but if I can limit it and I don't hole myself in, especially with a builder where it's going to be like, look, here's 50 homes, just go slap up these walls and do these tub surrounds and be done with it, right? And then you get so busy doing that, how do you get out of it? And so if you want to change your business model, like, you have to find a way to get rid of that work and really start finding the stuff you want. Go ahead.
And you have to market yourself that way. And when I say marketing yourself, you don't necessarily have to like create a big expensive marketing campaign, but you've got to. I would highly recommend, if that's where you want to be and that's who you want to be working for, and that's the type of clients you want to be joining, like the NKBA. The National Kitchen and Bath Association, mm-hmm. and going to those meetings and getting to know, they usually meet once a month on Thursdays, getting to know the interior designers in your area and other contractors who are involved in the area, talking to them, telling them what you do, looking for opportunities. I mean, you have to put yourself out there.
I agree.
You really do.
And don't showcase the boring work. If you want to be known for doing big projects, like, look, you can go and install a living room of 12 by 24s. Don't put that on your website if that's not what you want to be known for. Go put the super crazy, I teamed up with the hardwood guy and cut a bunch of, hexagon tiles into the hardwood, and we grouted it all up, and it's a, blows me out of the water project. Advertise what you want to be known for and hide the rest. And because whatever you put out in the world is generally what you're going to get back. And if you're putting out mediocre, everyday standard installs, people are going to come to you thinking that's what you want to do. Don't do that.
Right. And you're going to do those. I mean, those can be bread and butter too, right? Correct. So, for us, it's like we still do plenty of subway tile tub hops and showers with 1-inch hex floors, and then nothing special about them. We do tons of them. I mean, they're great money makers. They're great filler. They're great everything, you know. But we do enough fantastic jobs. Those are the ones that end up on social media, end up on our website, and you kind of collect those kinds of things. And then, you know, lo and behold, more of those opportunities come to you, and then you get trusted to do the trickier jobs, the jobs that are going to require a little bit more than the guy who is who's just accepted the fact that this is what I'm just going to do these simple jobs.
Correct. Exactly.
And there are plenty of people out there. There are plenty of guys doing track homework, plenty of them, and good on them.
Correct.
If that's not you, and that's not who you want to be, then start getting creative about how you're going to break that mold. You know, break it. And like I said, you're getting to know everybody, getting to know everybody at every tile shop. If you've got a tile shop that sells cool tile, let them know you. Find out, you know, become friends with them. Find out ways if you can get on their recommended list, because every place has a recommended installer list, and there's some places you don't want to be on their list. And if you're on a list that you're getting lots of work from, but it's not getting the work you want, then get off that list and get on to the other ones.
Definitely.
But like I said, make as many friends as you can. And it takes extra time. I mean, it takes time away from your family. You do have to network though. You've got to create a network. And once you've done that, then just everything just kind of this organic thing starts to happen. The work just kind of starts to show up. You may feel like, nothing's coming in. And then one day you get a phone call, and that day you'll get another phone call and another phone call. It's kind of the difference a day makes. Sometimes it all just kind of comes together. And when it comes together, just, you know, estimate the work correctly, be communicative and creative, and engaging, and listen, ask questions, and kick ass, and make it fun.
Yes.
Because if it's not fun, then I mean, it's got to be fun. Everybody's got to be having fun while we're doing it. That's just all there is to it. Because it should be.
Yes. No, I agree. You can't, who wants to go to work every day in an environment that's not fun? And you see those posts in these online groups where people are, I hate it. You know, I've been doing it 40 years. I'm stuck in it. I try and get out and it draws me back in. And like, yeah, I get it. But look, it draws you back in because you know how to do it and you're letting it do it. If you really wanted to do something different, you'd go do it. So you might as well start enjoying what you're doing. And maybe you need to learn a new skill. Maybe you need to go find a different way to apply yourself. I don't know what it is that you need to work on to be happy doing what you're doing, but there is a way to be happy doing what you're doing. What I want to know is, has the creativity ever been a fault? Does it ever get in the way of getting the job done? Or did you have to learn to kind of control it, bring it back a little bit to make sure that the project stayed where they needed to go? Because I get, like, sometimes you get into something and you're like, oh, we could do this. And oh, we could, like, you start kind of talking your way right through a bad situation.
Yeah, I think I'm better at that than some. I mean, because being a business owner, I know when you can take something too far, right? And I realize that when an idea might cause a little bit of a problem. That's why. So I've always been good at it because I can always see the bottom line, and I always know that we could probably upsell and what doesn't make sense to upsell. I've had to do that with some of my people in my staff because I give them that. I say, let's talk about it. Not talk about this with the homeowner. Talk about it with me. Let's talk about this idea, and then if I can green light it, then we bring the homeowner in, and then we have the conversation. It really keeps it from. You don't want. I mean, you want to have your installers having a great rapport with the customer. You know, you really do. Then they want to feel warm and fuzzy. I mean, for Christ's sakes, you're in their home. You love it when you come to kind of friends with your clients where they're making you sandwiches or they're bringing you something to drink at the end of the day, or there's, oh yeah, use the fridge or this and that. But you don't want to get to the point where your staff is taking control of the project and it can drive it off a cliff if you're not careful. But if it all circles back to myself or to Travis, my other project manager, then sure enough, yeah, we're in control of it. We can guide it. And so, but it has happened, just so you know, it has happened where, communication and somebody gets excited about something. It's like, oh my God, what monster have we created here? So, but not very often, not often enough to be a problem.
Okay. So, I mean, let people kind of have free reign, let them have control, find a way to have a system in place that it has to get checked somewhere, but in your
Yeah,
company, it's by you, right? Like
yeah.
you have to bring this to me. We'll go through, see if it's worthwhile. Because I know like there's times where I've talked my way into a project where I'm at somebody's house and I'm like, oh, we could do this and that and like make it happen. And then I get home and I'm like, oh man, okay. How do I make this? Like, how do I actually do this now? Like, I know it works, but like, in theory, like this is possible, but now how do I practically put this together? Do you put yourself in that
Oh,
situation from,
dude, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It happens. It does, and then you put extra eggs in that basket. You work harder for that one. You make it happen. You figure it out.
mm-hmm.
But it does happen, and especially when you're a can-do, you know, guy like you and I. It's like I am one of the most can-do people there is. It's one of my best traits. If I see it, we can do it. We can make it happen. Other people would say no to it. I'll say, oh no, we can figure that out. As long as there's a TCNI installation method for it, then
Mm-hmm.
we can do it. You know, I'm not gonna put that tile over your vinyl just because somebody said you could do that. You know, oh yeah, just go ahead and install it. You use this. It's like no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're tearing
Yeah.
your vinyl and your particle board out. We're doing that. But when it comes to a design idea that somebody may have, and other people have said no, and we look at it and go, oh, we can totally do that. We can totally do that. And then you kind of go back and go, yeah, it's going to be tough though.
Those are some of my favorites though, because they really push you past your limits, get you uncomfortable. And when you come out on the other side, you're like, huh, I knew it was possible, but man, I surprised even myself this time, but it's good, right? There's growth. That's people that are getting frustrated with this, right? And they're not happy. Like, I think that's the kind of project that they need to find is they need to find this thing that they can go get really passionate about. And I sometimes, you know, if you're the guy that's working for a tract home company and you're out throwing down the same thing in the same model 5 days a week for a year straight while they build their 2,700 houses, I can get being frustrated, right? There's not a lot of opportunity for creativity and fun, but you got to find something. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's talking with the boss to see if you can try and do that for, you know, a month and then you find a way to, he sells some other stuff and you get to get off of it. But maybe you need something like you still play music. So yeah. It's right. Like I get that a 9 to 5 grind, owning a business, you know, and it's not necessarily 9 to 5. It'll wear you down. So oh, yeah. I'm sure that you have your time where you're like, I just need to go pick up my guitar and do something that lets me get out of this mindset I'm in.
Yeah. I wear myself out a lot of times, and I'm involved in a lot of things. So a lot of times I'm coming home, I may have to just take a 15-minute lay on the couch, just Zen moment, and then get up, make something to eat, and then get out the door to head to any of the various rehearsals I'm going to or recording sessions I'm doing. And and I'm burning the candle more than I ought to be, but I wouldn't do it any other way because it gives me so much happiness and so much satisfaction. It's so easy to come home and sit down and, you know, watch a show or a 5 in a row. And even then I like to do that too. Don't get me wrong, but you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep moving. You got to keep active. You've got to do something because, you know, it can also be a rut. And I think it's easy to get burned out. It's funny. Yesterday was a great example. I of being just burned out. I stayed up a little bit late on Sunday. I got to the office, had a new job start that was a total pain in the butt. There's so many things that weren't quite right. One of the sinks didn't come in. It's a long story. It's a very, very custom kitchen in a 1930s home. And there was a zillion things wrong. And I was back and forth to that job 3 times. I had 2 other appointments that I needed to be at. I had to cancel both of them. And then as well, I needed to get off work by 3 to get to a reunion with a bunch of friends from high school, about an hour and a half south. And I was realizing that I couldn't do it all. I couldn't make it all happen. So I had to cancel 2 meetings. And even then I'm getting more frustrated, and all these problems on on that job are going through my mind. It's like, I mean, this is like one of those classic examples of when things go wrong. You've got two undermount tiled farm sinks. One of them didn't show up and nobody told us. The second one was installed.
Gosh.
And then we found a tiny chip on it. And these are like incredibly expensive Kohler sinks, farmhouse sinks. And then we're going, okay, well, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the range wall. And discovered that the whoever put the venting in for the hood had it 3 inches off center. And so we couldn't even start that. And so, okay, we could rough these other things in. And so I was back and forth to the job multiple times. It's just, that will wear you the freak out.
Yes.
It's especially when you have other things you need to get done in your day and you're realizing that you can't get them done and you just have to muscle through. I mean, that's all there is to it. And then, so by the time I got home last night, I got home about 10:30, I went right to bed. I woke up this morning and I was like, cause yesterday I was just a crab. I just was just frustrated. And today I woke up, had a great night's sleep, came in with a whistle and a spring in my step. And it's like, oh, today's been great. So, and things are going right today. And the problems of yesterday are yesterday's problems. And you just got to make sure that you have less problems in your days and more successes. And sometimes that's easier said than done.
There's celebrate the successes and don't get hung up on the losses, right? Like the things that need to be fixed. A lot of people make lists at the end of the day, and I'm stealing this from my friend Tina in Colorado. So we got to keep track of what we need to get done. I get that, right? And you can make the list and you can look at everything that you have to get done the next day that you didn't get done today. Not so helpful at the end of the day, right? So set that list aside, write down everything that you got done that was a success and celebrate everything you got done that was actually a success. And you're going to come back and you're going to be like, man, I got a lot of things done, because it may not seem like it, but you start adding up all the little things you did. And you're like, man, I actually got some good stuff done today. And then you can come back the next day and you're like, oh, that stuff's not that big of a deal. Like, okay, I can knock this out, and move forward. And I think that's where we get caught up in the wrong mindset being business owners, right? We're always looking at how do we get to the next step? What didn't we get done that is super important that we need to get done? And yes, that stuff's important, but look at where you came from. Where did you start? And how far have you gotten already? That if you don't think you can overcome this step, you really need to stop and evaluate where you're at, because how many things have you already overcome that you didn't think you were going to do? And it's the same. We do the same thing every time. Like, I think it's just human nature. Like, oh, there's a roadblock. This is hard. And then you look back and you're like, oh, well, that's not any different than that one like 10 roadblocks ago. Like, I got this. Like, let's change our attitudes. Let's change our mindsets. Let's know what we bring to the table. And that's really where this conversation started, was right. Like, we bring creativity to the table, and that is a hugely valuable resource. Not everybody has what we have. So,
right.
That being said, is there anything we should have hit on that you don't think we hit on?
I don't know. We covered a lot of ground.
We did.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, I told you an hour, we're already over that. So I want to, you're okay. A busy man. Well, so I want to make sure that we stay kind of on schedule.
Yeah, no, I think we covered everything we need to. And unless you have anything else, I think that and there's a lot there, right? There's a lot there. I've got one of my main employees, Hope, he's moving. His last day was Friday, and he's moving to Bend, Oregon, which is Central Oregon. Huge, booming opportunities for him. He's actually got a book of work going to land in his lap, because it's built a contractor, or not a contractor, a designer I do a ton of work for here. And she's got a bunch of customers in Bend right now. And so he's about ready to start his company in Bend. He is an incredible technician, but I don't know that there's so many things that he needs to know before he starts working.
Yes.
And it's overwhelming. And like, I'm going to do everything I can to mentor him along the way. But it's a lot to start a company. It's a lot. What we do, I mean, especially after a number of years of trudging through, making mistakes, learning the organic, real way, you learn a lot of lessons. And I'm excited for him, but I'm also, it's funny because now I think about it, I'm actually a little bit overwhelmed for him because he's about ready to walk into a great opportunity with a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep going, thinking about all the things he doesn't know yet. And I was like, going to God, okay, please ask me questions, as
Yeah.
many as you
Yeah.
can. Happily help you.
And please, folks, don't be afraid to teach your employees the business side of things.
No,
Right?
it's important, man.
They need to know. And I've talked to too many successful companies that have employees where the employees have left, they go, they try it out on their own for 2 or 3 years, and the story is the same over and over and over again. They go out, it doesn't work. They left on a good note. They didn't burn the bridge. They come and they say, "Can I have my job back?" And everyone's happy to hire them back. They're happy to not have to go and do the bids, do the paperwork, figure out the overheads, all this stuff that you're not being taught. Teach your employees how to do it, and they may not even want to leave in the first place. You know, there's a
I
lot of
agree with you.
there's a lot of times that my guys, that when I have an employee on payroll, they don't realize where the trash goes at night, right? The back of my truck gets loaded with all this stuff. The truck comes back empty the next day. They weren't there to unload it. They drove to the job site, self-reported, and they drove home. I threw that out after I went to the bid, after I did Cub Scouts with my kids, after I had dinner, after I put the kids to bed, right? Then I go back out to the truck, empty the thing into the dumpster. Like, they don't realize that all this stuff happens. Have those conversations. How, explain why it costs them. You can only pay them $25 an hour. Why? Well, because there's another $10 behind the scenes that they don't see. And they're only doing X amount of dollars per hour worth of work. Like, have that conversation. It's not going to hurt you. In fact, that's why most people don't get it. And we get mad and we're like, "Oh, this employer's ripping me off. The boss is a jerk. He doesn't pay well enough." Well, it's because no one ever had the conversation with them of how it actually works. I didn't know that taxes had to be matched for the longest time. I didn't know workers' comp costs. I didn't know that existed. Right. So
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's great that, like, you, not only is he moving, you have a designer that you helped hook him up with, but now you're willing to sit there and say, "Look, if you have questions, come back, ask me. I'm happy to help you grow and learn." And if for any reason it didn't work, I guarantee you that he would come back and be like, "Hey, Dirk, can I have a job back?"
Oh yeah, totally. I'm not worried about that. I hate losing him,
Mm-hmm.
but I understand why he's moving. He's got family in the area, and he's got 2 little kids, and he's wants to be closer to mom and dad, and his mother-in-law and father-in-law, and that makes tons of sense.
Yeah.
And the opportunities there are incredible. I just want to make sure that he's massively successful, and he understands everything he needs to do in order to run the business he's about ready to start running.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other part of it, right? You want him to be successful. So how many times do we see contractors want to put somebody out there or they don't want to teach you enough to be able to go out on your own? Well, now you
Right.
wonder why the market is the way the market is, because you never trained anybody to compete on an equal or better level with you. You've given this gentleman all the tools he needs to compete at a high level and do equivalent or better work. You're only helping bring the market up instead of forcing it down, because the people
That's exactly
aren't
right.
going with you. It's all a commodity now. Lippage is acceptable. You can walk through any tract home build and homeowners expect there to be lippage in their tile. They expect to be able to see a seam in their carpet. They will accept that the baseboards go up first when all the other trim goes up in a house, instead of it going on after the flooring is installed. There's all of these little details that have been whittled down. I saw a post today. A gentleman was installing carpet in a trailer. The subfloor was rotted and pushed down, and he was like, "Oh, I tried to get him to do it, but they didn't want to." And he was like, I hate having to do work like this." And I was like, "Well, did you install it or not? Like, did your morals win out, or did the client win out?" And he was like, "Well, I called the store and they said just do it, so I did it." You're a subcontractor for that store, and even if you're an employee, like, your morals should go further. Please refuse to do the work, because this is why we're at where we're at in all of this. Is you make that compromise, and then you tell the rest of the industry it's okay to make that compromise. You train your employee it's okay to make that compromise, and it gets perpetuated. Stop. Please
Right.
value it all goes, once again, we're going to go back to the beginning. Value yourself. What you bring to the table is not a commodity. Creativity is not a commodity. Know what you're bringing, please. And
Absolutely.
I'll leave it there. So you got it. You got anything else for me? We went off on another tangent, but I'm okay with that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Probably my fault. No, but it was great talking to you, Kyle. You're amazing. Thank you for what you do. And I look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Yeah, no, thank you. I very much appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on and, giving us a little background about you and your experiences so that everyone can be out there bettering their business. Folks, check out flooracademypod.com. You can help support the show at patreon.com/flooracademy. Thank you to the sponsors, and we will catch you next week.